All right, the purpose of this practical today is to show you how to set up the speeds and how to use drill press properly. As you can see in our shop, we have many different types of drill presses, and we'll introduce you to how to change the speeds and how to set up your drill bit in it. The way we're going to work with it is we're going to show you an example here. We have a drawing that we have to follow. So point drill gauge here for you. This is what we will be making at the end. You will use hand tools to shape a lot of the contour on it, and you will use power tools to drill the holes for the different diameters here. So what we have to do is follow the drawing. What we have here is the one drill gauge that is done by hand without having the holes there. We also have the one that is finished product, which has all of the different diameter holes in there and the shapes. And we also have our blank here, which is the one that I'm going to use to show you how it's supposed to be done in the drill. Just so that you know a little bit more, and we'll cover this at a different time. A drill gauge, point drill gauge, serves us to check angles on a drill bit. Okay, it also allows us, depending on the diameter of the drill, to actually gauge the size of it into the holes. So let's proceed to the next step, which will be laying out this piece using a prick punch and a center punch, and then move on to the drill press. All right, folks, this is a sensitive drill press. What you have in this unit here is we have the motor up at the top, and we have gears here that's what allows you to change your speeds. This unit works at 60 Hertz, and we have a speed 1, a speed 2, as you can see here, and all you have to do is follow these levers, and when it comes to actually setting it up. Very important for all of you to know always is safety is the #1 thing. So we want to make sure that the area is clear. We want to make sure we have proper clamping devices to it. We want to make sure there is power to it. We want to make sure that the unit is, or the drill press is actually working. So easy enough to turn it on. You got a forward and you got reverse. So forward, the drill is turning. 1 and 2, 1 and 2. Emergency stop. Twist. Reset emergency stop. And it looks like this drill is ready to work. Our next thing is to show you that you have different areas here, or different adjustments to the drill. This adjusts the height of your table. This part here adjusts the height of your head. Okay, and using this handle, you will crank it up, crank it down. Same thing in the other side. You crank it up, crank it down. What we have in our shop here is we have the chuck key attached to a chain. This is a must know, must remember. This should never, ever, ever be left on the chuck like that. Okay, this should never be done. It's a firing offense actually if you keep it in that place. So always off, and we'll take you to the next step, which is setting up speeds. All right, so what we have here is our chuck here. So our chuck has 1, 2, 3 holes. One important fact that you need to know is that when you are changing drill bits, you don't need to unplug for lockout unless your drill bit is 1/2 inch or over. If it's 1/2 inch or bigger in diameter, you must unplug. Any small drill bit, you can go without unplugging. So the chuck has 3 holes there, which allow us to actually bring in our chuck key. When you have 3 holes, you always want to use the 3 holes to actually place it. We discussed this earlier. So this is the shank of the drill bit. We'll place it in. We make sure that it's center. And I know it's centered now. I'm going to spin it a little bit to see if it works, and it looks like it's working. So my next step will be applying my key. 1, 2, and 3. So I use the 3 holes that secure the drill bit exactly where I want it. Okay, so we moved from the shop to the classroom. We like to expand a little on where we got the numbers from, where the formula comes from, and that is your Millwright Manual, Chapter 4, page 37. What we have in front of you right now is a table, which is cutting speed table, and it tells you the different materials that you have, and based on the different materials you would have to use a specific number. The number that we use out there, because we had plain mild steel, would be cutting speed in feet per minute. It's between 80 to 120. What we tell you in the shop is we use 100 to be in the middle there. So the formula that we use in the shop was RPM, which it's RPM equals cutting speed times our constant, and a constant, again, the conversion is in your Millwright Manual, and here we use 4, and you'll see that later. I'll explain where that 4 came from, and that will be divided by the diameter of the drill bit that you will be using. Now, in the sample in the shop, we had RPM equals our cutting speed based on Millwright Manual again. Millwright Manual calls 80 to 120. We'll use 100, so 100 being mild steel times our constant divided by the diameter. Our diameter for our example was 1/8 of an inch, so we convert that to 0.125, and our result was this equation, 32, or somewhere close to RPM, 3200 RPM, okay? So that explains our formula to when you're out in the shop and you're required to drill a hole. This number will change based on the diameter of your, of what you're required to drill, okay? All right. So we're back. We got our drill bit in place. We secured it and using the 3 holes. Okay, and now our next step before we do anything else is set up our speeds. So to set up the speed, we use the formula that we learned in the classroom, which is RPM equals cutting speed times 4 divided by diameter of the drill bit. So in this case, our first pilot hole, it's 1/8 of an inch. The material that we're working with is mild steel, which will equal 100 in our table, as you saw in the classroom. So that means RPM is cutting speed times 4 divided by diameter. So cutting speed is 100 because of the material, times 4 is the constant that we have in the formula, and the diameter of this drill bit is 1/8, which is 0.125. That results in, once you do that equation, you got about 3,200 RPM. So when you look at here, we got the speed 1 calls for those numbers that you see there, and speed 2 calls for the numbers that you see there. So the closest number to us is the fastest speed. If you look, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay, so we'll proceed to turn it on. One thing to remember that is important is that the smaller the drill, the smaller the hole, the faster you go. The bigger the hole, the slower you go. All right, so now that we know the numbers, now that we know the speed of this drill, let's proceed with changing it to the number that we have or that we need. So as you can see here, we got the 2 levers here, which are on the side of the drill. And so we need to place them the same way. So the bottom lever would be this way, and the top lever would go that way. So if you're unsure whether or not it's engaged, you can turn this by hand, and if it spins, it's engaged. If one of these wasn't engaged, like I'm doing right now, then you'll have nothing here. If you if you're not engaged. So make sure that it's engaged and you'll feel the resistance here. So once we have that, we now have the speed set up. Let's do a quick test. We're gonna run it in speed 2. So forward, speed 2. And our drill is ready. Now we need to set up our device. All right, our speed is set. We're now ready to come and set up to center straight to where it's supposed to be. We have a prick punch, center punch marked. So what we need to do now is we'll bring it down. Our vise is still loose. So we'll bring it down and we'll get it as close as we can to where it's supposed to be. As you can see here, I got the little dimple there and I'm gonna touch. I'm not applying a lot of force, I'm just touching. And as I touch, I get it right where it is. I'm going to return or move the drill chuck backwards to see if our drill bit moves, and it looks very straight. So I know it's centered. Once I have it centered, without moving, I'm going to proceed to secure the vise in place. Every time you're drilling a hole, you must have the vise secured. You don't want the vise or the piece to go flying around because it could hurt somebody, it could hurt you. At this point, we're ready to drill the hole. All right, so now that we're ready, we secure the vise, we have our speed, we have everything ready here. The whole point of this lesson was to introduce you to a drill press, changing the speeds on a drill press, and drilling holes on a piece of metal. If you selected the right speed, if you did your calculations properly, you're going to have many advantages. One of them, less stress on the tool, less forces applying down, and the finish of the hole would be better if your drill bit is sharp. One more thing to mention as we drill, which is the demo that we're doing now, is apply some, we're gonna apply a little bit of heat dissipator, which is basically a lubricating coolant to the hole before we drill. We don't need to apply much. That's all you need to proceed to make a hole.